Alrighty, so today we're going to preview the other Eastern Conference semifinal and the Eastern Conference semifinal that will happen on Sunday between Orlando City and Atlanta United. And it was about a month from now that on that decision day game between Orlando City versus Atlanta, Atlanta not only won that game against City, but they also got some help from other teams to get themselves miraculously into the playoffs. But if you would have told me that literally a month later this would be a matchup we would see in the playoffs, no one would have believed you. I mean, Orlando City, I think there were some that would say that they were probably the more likely to make it to this stage. Although, that game against Charlotte FC, I've already mentioned, that game felt like that was not only the first big test for Orlando City, but that was probably possibly the worst opponent that they could have faced in the first round. But they passed that and just kind of barely does so. If it wasn't for Charlotte kind of imploded late in the game and in the PK showed in game number three. But nobody would have thought Atlanta would be at this stage. I mean, if you ask any five stripe fan that they would be the one that advanced out of that Inter Miami game, I mean, I'm pretty sure the rest of the league would love to see that happen because that would be just maximum chaos that would happen. And yet, that's exactly what we have. And this is where, again, I'm also mentioned about Atlanta United of how I feel like the run that they're on right now is very similar to the run that Real Salt Lake made a couple of years ago when Real Salt Lake was the last team in, and they were able to beat Sporting KC in the final game of the season to make it into the playoffs. And guess what happened in the second round in the conference semifinal? Guess who RSL played in that game? Oh yeah, that's right. It's against Sporting KC, the same team that they beat on decision day to get to that stage. So is it going to be deja vu all over again, where we see a team that was able to make the playoffs by beating a team on decision day and facing them the same time in the conference semi final and able to move on into the next round? We'll see. But anyway, the game will start at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific. All-time meeting 11-7-4 in favor of Atlanta United. So obviously, we know the rivalry between Orlando City and Atlanta United, and I'm pretty sure Orlando City fans, yeah, they know how much of a hardship that they have been dealing with Atlanta United. Although I will say that recently the meetings have been a little bit much more even compared to the beginning, where Atlanta United simply own Orlando City. There's a reason why Joseph Martinez basically said that he is the father of Orlando City, because Orlando just keep losing game to Atlanta, and sometimes in hilarious fashion as well. And this is also where I would say that for some that think that maybe Atlanta has a chance to cause another big upset. Remember, they also had Inter Miami number, and they were kind of the kryptonite for Inter Miami. So in many ways, for Orlando City, I mean, as much as they are the heavy favorites now to potentially run the table and get it to MLS Cup and represent the Eastern Conference team out of MLS Cup, they now have to face it against another team that this was probably might be one of the worst team that they would had faced in the second round of the playoffs against a team that just simply had their number uh in the all-time meeting. But last five head-to-head matchup, it was Atlanta winning 2-1 against Orlando City. That of course was the decision day game that basically made Atlanta uh push them into the playoffs thanks to also some help from elsewhere. But before that, they won 2-0 against Orlando City. Then Orlando did win 2-1 on the road against Atlanta before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then Atlanta was able to win 1-0 against Orlando City. So I say that, things are a little bit even. Not really. I mean, you can see that Atlanta still has the better over Orlando City, especially at Exploria Stadium, or now it's called Inter and Co Stadium, that is. Now, when you look at the round one result, both of these teams had to go 3 games in the best of three series. For Orlando, they won game one with a 2-0 win against Charlotte, but then they lost in the PK shootout 3-1 in the game where, yeah, that was a pretty bad game for Orlando City. And then in the game three, in the pivotal game three, they were literally minutes away of getting knocked out. Charlotte had the lead late in this game, but then they score a late goal to tie it up thanks to them getting a penalty late, and that's when they, of course, were able to win the PK shootout and move on into the next round. That happened on November 9th. For Atlanta, we all know that they are on the happy end in terms of the biggest upset we have ever seen in league history, knocking off really the MLS Cup favorite Inter Miami. They did lose the first game though, 2-1 against Inter Miami. I remember that was the game where that was the the Brad Guzan game. In fact, that series was basically the Brad Guzan series, and I'll talk about how he's gonna definitely be a big factor for Orlando United in this series as well. But after that, they were able to win 2-1 against Inter Miami. And it was a come from behind win. They were down 1-0 in that second game, but they come from behind, score a late goal to make it into the next round, and then the improbable happened in game number three, a game that everybody thought that yeah, it seems like Apple TV and MLS script writers are basically saying that yeah, let's get an extra game just for rating wise, but to their biggest horror, their biggest prize, lost that game as Atlanta was able to win 3-2 in that game, and that also happened on November 9th. That was kind of part of the back to back that we saw in terms of the craziness that we saw at that night. Now, looking at the top goal scorer for Orlando City, it's Facu Torres with 16 goals. Remember how he was struggling in the beginning of the season? Yeah, he has definitely picked up in the second half of the season. Followed by Duncan McGuire with 10 goals, Romero Enrique with 8 goals, Ivan Angulo with 5 goals, and Luis Morio rounds up the top 5 with 5 goals. For Orlando, Samuel Lopjanidze leads the team with 10 goals. Unsurprisingly, he's been kind of the main goal scorer for this Atlanta team going forward. Then you got Jamal Ray scoring eight goals. He was a big factor in game number uh, three in that series, scoring those two goals, and really scoring 2 goals in a quick amount of time to really propel Atlanta to a really surprising lead early in that game against Inter Miami. Then you also have Danny Rios with 7 goals, Steven Gregerson with 3 goals, and then Alexei Marinchuk rounds up the top 5 with 3 goals. Top assist leader, you got Martino Ojeda with 9 assists for Orlando City. Then you got Nico Ladero with 7 assists. So Ladero still has it, even though I know some people feel like it's been kind of an afterthought season for him with Orlando City. He's actually done pretty well, even if he's coming off the bench. Obviously, he's nothing like the prime Ladero that we saw during his time with Seattle, but definitely having a pretty quiet good season as well. Then you got Ivan Angulo with 6 assists, Luis Moria with 5 assists, and Dagger Dan for Halson rounds up the top 5 with 4 assists. For Atlanta United, it's actually Pedro Amador that leads the team with 8 assists. He has really becoming a very underrated player in the league, and probably one of the quietest best signing we have seen in the summer transfer window. He has really looked very well, and he can be a big piece for this Atlanta team in the future. Then you also have Brooks Lennon with 7 assists, followed by Sabalov Janidze with 4 assists, Alexei Marinchuk with 4 assists, and then rounding out the top 5 is Tristan Moriomba with 3 assists. Now, the three big storyline coming into this game, obviously, there's no doubt the pressure is on Orlando City because, I mentioned yesterday in my video who has the most pressure in terms of winning MLS Cup or even reaching the final in some way. Orlando City probably have the highest pressure and definitely have that in terms of the out of all the Eastern Conference team. This is by far the best team when it comes to talent wise, compared to the remaining team in the Eastern during conference. And there's no doubt that this has to be the year that they got to capitalize in terms of going deep because they know that they squander this opportunity. Next year those top tier team like Columbus and Cincinnati and even Inter Miami, they're gonna have it go again. But because of how all three of those giants in the Eastern Conference fall in the first round in spectacular fashion, you got to say this has to be the chance for Oscar Pereira, Orlando City team to pounce and also kind of defeat that narrative that they just can't get past the second round. That's been the problem for this team. This team has had multiple opportunity to get past the second round, couldn't quite do so. Though I feel like the pressure in terms of them getting past the second round probably the highest ever before because I think in the previous second round match, I mean the game against New England a couple of years back, they were favorites in terms of moving on, but they just kind of self imploded both physically and mentally in that game, getting a couple of red cards, and then the game against Columbus last year. I mean that was kind of anybody's game, but they were just kind of on the wrong end of it, eventually losing to the MLS Cup champion. This one, there's no excuse for them to lose it. You're facing against a Atlanta team that, yes, I know they have all the momentum in the world, and they're pretty much playing the biggest house money out of any team right now remaining in the league. But there's no excuse to not make it to the conference final for the very first time, especially with the competition in the Eastern Conference just really weakened because of what we saw the crazy upset in the first round out of the East. But if they want to do that, they have to get past Brad Guzan because Brad Guzan has just been a man that just kind of turned back the clock in this playoffs. A guy that he's been very inconsistent this season at times. He kind of looked like he's completely washed, and maybe this year or next year might be the time he's gonna hang up his boots. But man, this playoffs, like I said, he just completely turned back the clock. Like that performance against Inter Miami, by far one of the best goalkeeping display we have ever seen in a playoff history. And there's no doubt that they're hoping that that will continue in this series as well, especially when you're facing against an Orlando City team that they just like Inter Miami, they also have some really dangerous weapon going for it on the attack, and he's also a team in terms of creating a lot of chances with their beautiful soccer that Oscar team always tends to implement. Now, despite that, obviously, as much as Brad Guzan will have to come up big for Atlanta and hope that maybe they'll get some unsung heroes scoring some key goals in key moments, as Atlanta has done throughout the playoffs and even going back to when they just barely made it to the playoffs. I think the big question, also going back to Orlando's side, is that they got to be more clinical in terms of their finishing. In that game against Charlotte, yes, I know they were facing against Charlotte. Charlotte is one of the best defensive team in the league, but they had chances in that game against Charlotte. And yes, they also did ran into a good goalkeeper in Christian Kalina, who ended up winning the goalkeeper of the year. But again, they have to be more clinical in terms of finishing. Some of those chances that they had wasn't really because of Kalina making some big save. Well, maybe some it was just simply Kalina standing on his head, but some you just got to say that those were just more missed chances and one that you're just kind of scratching your heads of how they did not finish rather than the goalkeeper making an incredible save. So there's no doubt that they have to show that clinical finishing, because if they don't do so against this Atlanta team. Again, this is an Atlanta team that, not only playing with house money, this playoffs, they have showed time and time again where just as you think that they're down and out, just as you think things look like things are not gonna work out for them, they come up with a key moment to score late goal to move on into the next round. And that's where, if you're Orlando, it's also very important that when it comes to who needs to score first, it's got to be Orlando City. They cannot find themselves behind the eight ball just like they did on decision day, where they found themselves 2-0 down. You simply can't do that in the playoffs and expect to win and move on to the next round. I mean, I know it has happened before. We have seen some 2-0 deficit being overcome and teams implode in the playoffs, but you would rather not be in that situation if you're Orlando City, and that, again, pressure has to be on them. If they do not win this game, this would be just an absolute failure in Orlando's City part, and there's got to be some question that we'll have to make about this team, and maybe even the current core of the fact that they're getting to the level of Philadelphia Union level legacy failure of just not able to overcome the hump to move on into the conference final. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this preview, and as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction for this game. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.